Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, everyone. Women's Tournament Edition. I am Ashley Nicole Moss, and as usual, riding with me is Terrika Foster-Brasby. What's up, girl? How you doing?
I'm making it. We're here.
Making it, we are. It's been a doozy of a tournament so far, and all eyes are now on Cleveland, South Carolina, UConn, Iowa, and NC State are all that remains after an absolutely epic Elite Eight battle. But before we get into that, we have a very special announcement. On April 7th, following the conclusion of the national championship game, we are launching We Need to Talk Now, hosted by myself and Alicia J. We are very, very excited about this. We'll be highlighting women's sports weekly. So to find it, just search We Need to Talk Now wherever you listen to your podcast, and keep in touch with our socials and all that. We got you covered.
I love this so much. Congratulations, girl.
Thank you. Yes, very excited. Listen, all credit to Alicia. She's blood, sweat, and tears into this project. It's been a long time coming for her. So I'm just very happy that she has finally reached the point where she can present her baby to the world and bring me along for the ride. But listen, we got to get into these Final Four matchups. It was a crazy battle in the Elite Eight. I just feel like so much has been talked about, whether good or bad. As we know, with the good comes the bad. But I mean, what was some of the things that stood out to you before we dive into, looking ahead of what's going on?
Got everything. Literally everything, Ash. Like seriously,
Yeah.
the style of play was great. The pace of the game was great. Both teams came out of literally in both matchups, everyone came out of the gate like close firing. I love the Cinderellas, the NC State, just like literally everything. The star players were the star players. Like you didn't see a moment where the star player didn't live up to the expectation of what we wanted to see from them. So, I mean, honestly, when I look back at the Elite Eight, I'm like, this is what March Madness is all about.
Yeah. And I mean, looking back at the Elite Eight, we're going to highlight the good, but we also got to highlight the bad and kind of the weird. And one of the weird things was in Portland. 5 games were played before the NCAA officials realized that the court had 2 different lengths for the 3-point line. How you just realized that 5 games after the fact is just mind-blowing. There was a 9-inch difference at the apex. Now, listen, the NCAA did apologize for the oversight, but that doesn't remove the fact that games were played with this very big error. I mean, this is a huge margin of error. If you are any of the teams that played on this court prior to the realization that, yeah, it's a little off here, I mean, how upset are you? Possibly, especially if you didn't win.
I ain't upset at all because
Okay.
it's not a single team that can say, oh, we lost because we had an unfair length of the court for the 3-point line. Well, you didn't quite shoot exactly 100% from the side of the court that had the correct 3-point line.
Point.
So it's not like you can use this as to say, I lost because of this. And even hearing from Coach Vic Schaefer after the game as it relates to Texas, his players didn't even know that there was a discrepancy on the court until after the game was over. Tara Vanderveer was very vocal about it. And I do agree with her point that we have to be better about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
The NCAA said it was a human error. Well, I mean, humans do make mistakes. We get grace. We understand that. But in these moments, like, you got to double check, and then check again, even for things that you don't necessarily or normally have to check for. So I do think that it should have been caught and called out way sooner than it was. But no coach can be upset about how their team performed, because it's not like that was the difference in a win and a loss. Like, it was not. Stanford didn't lose the game because they shot poorly from 3. There were many other factors that Stanford lost the game. Texas wasn't even in the game after Isaiah James went off for like 21 points in the first half. So there's no reason that anyone can say they lost because of this error.
It is interesting, though, I mean, how this error even came to be about, right? Because you would think that there's kind of like a hierarchy of, officials and checkers and court checkers and double checkers and triple checkers,
Right.
especially of a tournament of this magnitude. Granted, I don't want to, push aside, the importance of a regular season game, but having this happen in a regular season game is one thing. Having it happen in a tournament where everything is so much one and done and there's
Yep.
so much on the line, you would think that there are multiple steps to making sure that the things you can control, which are, the measurements of the court and the lines on the court,
Yeah.
are double, triple, quadruple checked. And that not being the case was definitely an eyebrow raiser. But for me, it was the amount of games that were played before it was realized this was a mistake.
That
Like,
part.
okay, the once I can give you a pass, and then someone probably like was on the baseline, like, this is a little off. But 2, 3, 4, 5, my hands are off. But that's crazy to me.
I think it's interesting too that like the players who played in those previous matchups didn't notice. Like to me that
Right.
is what's interesting as well. Like it wasn't as if it was that. I think that is what, if I'm angry at the fact that these things continue to happen, and they continue to happen in the women's tournament.
That
I don't
part.
think we see these things in the men's tournament, like this carelessness
Mhm.
or this disregard for how our facilities and our things are set up. I think that would be why I would be more angry than the actual outcome or result of a game.
Right.
Because it just, honestly, none of these games were affected specifically by the difference in the 3-point lines. Because you literally have to play both sides of the court. And sweetie, y'all were shooting 25%. It wasn't your night from 3. So there was that.
Listen, absolutely just craziness. And the craziness continued in the LSU Iowa matchup. This was just a sought after game, must see TV. If you were watching anything other than this, you missed one hell of a battle. I was telling people, listen, we do the Beyond the Arc podcast, and I was telling my guys, do not ask me about the NBA Tuesday morning, because I promise you, I'm not going to be watching. And I wasn't watching. They had to give me all the cliff notes of all the games the night before, because I was locked in on this game, obviously the UConn USC game that followed. But we got the rematch that we wanted, that we were hoping for. We got the battle of Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. And a lot of people, we did a bracket here, and, just scanning other people's brackets as well. A lot of people had LSU advancing to the Final Four. But in true March Madness fashion, Iowa said, not so fast. We want our lick back. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, how awesome was that matchup? And then we'll focus on USC and UConn after.
Yeah, no, this matchup started the way that I think we all hoped that it would end. It started very quick pace, which I thought was already to the detriment of LSU, because LSU does not play this fast style, up tempo kind of basketball. And for them to even begin the game like that, I was like, they're not going to be able to finish this way. Everything that I had criticized Iowa for doing leading into this matchup, they fixed. And that was so
They heard
critical.
you, girl. They
heard me. The main thing that I had criticized, Iowa for was, where is Caitlin supporting Kaz? I am not at all surprised that she dropped 41-12. It's Caitlin Clark. Hell yeah, she dropped 41-12. But I kept saying this entire time, who is going to help her? Who's going to step up? Who's going to be her support system? Who else is going to help her score? Because she cannot do it alone. Where is this defense? Where y'all going to show up? Because y'all got to defend. And Iowa showed up to do just that. Kate Martin, she dropped 21 points. She helped. Caitlin had 12 assists because she was dishing the ball. People were moving. She was making incredible passes. O'Grady came off the bench and was like, yo, I'm about to shut it down and make it difficult for Angel to get points in the paint. And she did just that. Like, those were the things that we wanted to see, and Iowa lived up to the challenge. And that is why that game took such a turn in that second half. Now, you can also add, I think, that Angel Reese had like an ankle tweak,
A little tweak of the ankle,
a little
right, and
tweak
it
of the
kinda
ankle.
slowed her down a little bit. She wasn't as
Yep.
her tenacity wasn't as much there. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that was something else that I noticed, like, she did not look the same
Mhm.
afterwards, and Angel's the leader of this team, so when your leader kind of feels like they're out of it a little bit, even if they don't necessarily verbalize it, you can say, "Hey, I can tell there is something wrong, there's something going on, and my play is starting to reflect that." That's just simply what it was. LSU wasn't shooting well. They weren't making great defensive assignments. I don't know what Kim Mulkey was doing,
Let's
having HVL on
Let's
Caitlin.
talk about
Honey,
that because
honey.
that seemed to be the biggest takeaway, I feel like, from the scheme of this game or lack thereof. I mean, HBL was having a hard time guarding Caitlin Clark. She was out there on an island by herself. I don't know if anybody else didn't want to switch or Kim didn't want to put anybody else on Caitlin Clark, but it was just a bad defensive matchup. And granted, look, some may say that Haley may or may not be the best defender. And some may say, why was she on Caitlin Clark? Most players would have an issue with Caitlin Clark. Most players have had an issue with Caitlin Clark, but there is always a player who may have just a little bit less of an issue that you're supposed to go ahead and put that switch on. And it just did not happen. It was just trying to fit a circle into a triangle, space, and it
Yeah.
was not working. And it's very interesting that that adjustment was not made until it basically was too late. At that point, it did not matter. And it was a
Yep.
big question mark from Coach Kim and everybody watching this because you figure like she knows better. This is not a team she hasn't faced before. This is not, a young woman that she's not familiar with. So it makes you kind of wonder, why was that your scheme? And if it was, which is fine, why did it take you so long to change it? I think that's
That's
the
the
bigger
thing.
question.
Yep, that's the thing right there that I just didn't understand that. Like, you have got to disguise it at some point.
Right.
You've got to switch off. You've got to play off the screen. You've got to bring another player from the side. You've got to disguise it at some
Yes.
point. Like, you're 100% correct. There's nobody is going to just be one. Like, I have yet to see a player that can just completely shut down Caitlin Clark. I have seen some great defense along with Caitlin having a bad shooting game,
Yeah.
and I've seen it. Like, we've seen
Look
that.
at West Virginia.
West Virginia did a great job of
Yeah.
slowing, great job, but ultimately you should have made those adjustments well into the game. So I say all that to say that when you combine the miscues, the coaching questions and discrepancies from LSU, the injury to Angel Reese would kind of took her off her game, and you combine that with Iowa doing everything right, you get the result that you get, which is
Yeah.
Iowa moving on to the 5-4.
And speaking of Angel Reese and LSU, Angel Reese has about 22 minutes ago declared officially for the WNBA draft, and she did so via Vogue. So that is a flex, the ultimate flex, if you will. No surprises. I feel like most of us kind of, we were talking about it before we started filming. No surprise from you. I think that
Yeah.
was expected. I think most people expected her to declare. It would be more surprising if she decided not to. Any thoughts on this, or it's kind of like, yeah, we know.
Not surprised. Not
Yeah.
surprised. I literally was just on a different show, and I was like, hey, I don't know what I don't know what Angel is gonna do, but if it were me, I'm declaring for the draft. Like, you are ready to play at the next level. Like,
Yeah.
it just kind of is what it is. You're ready to play at the next level. I don't know where she might fall in the draft. It'd be great if she fell to Minnesota. I think playing for a team like playing for Cheryl Reeve, a team that has a championship culture, a team that has a championship pedigree, that has a lot of veteran, like alumni veteran players that still communicate with current team members. I just think that that kind of atmosphere would be really good for her. And of course, I also think, seeing her play alongside some of the newer in a venue that fits for her, in a fan
Right.
base that will support her, where she can exercise her skill set as playing a point guard as well as being a post player. Like, I think like that would be great for her. So I would love to see her in Minnesota. But who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting. I feel like this probably is one of the most exciting draft classes that we've had in
Yeah.
recent years. It's definitely going to be something that I feel like so many people are going to be tuned into where these young women will end up, and ultimately it's just going
Yeah.
to be great for the game. But speaking of great games, USC and UConn followed LSU and Iowa. We had the
Yep.
battle between Juju and Paige, which was so much fun to watch. A little bit more tight knit, more competitive in the way that the game was being played. Ultimately, UConn got the best of USC. Juju, as you can expect, was very visibly upset, but I mean, her future is so bright. To advance to the Elite
She
Eight
made me
at
cry.
18 years old, I mean, just so bright. And you have to be happy for Paige. I feel like this was like one of those matchups where everybody kind of has their favorites and they pick a side. I feel like this USC UConn matchup, you were happy either way because it's like Paige has that redemption story of coming back from the injury and it's UConn and you have USC with Juju and the bun and just her stardom and how bright her star is going to be. It was like I honestly did not have a favorite going into this. I was like either team wins, either girl wins, I'm happy. And UConn got the better of the matchup.
I cried,
Yeah.
Ashley. I was doing so good, and then I saw Juju walking off the court, so emotional, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Girl, you are getting to me." There were so many takeaways from this game. Number one, Paige wants all of y'all to remember that she is still her, and don't y'all ever forget it. So there was that.
And not
Um,
Kobe. She Kobe is Kobe and Paige is Paige.
and Paige is Paige,
Yes.
not the same, but yeah, she's like she wants y'all to remember that she's her. Um, I don't always say this out loud, and I probably won't ever say this out loud again, but Gino Auriemma is the man because
That's big
how?
coming from you.
That is huge coming from me. I don't be giving Gino no love. I ain't gonna lie, I don't be giving Gino no love. But I have got you have to show respect where respect is due.
Right.
And the fact that this team suffered 6 player injuries throughout the course of this season that took them out for the year. They are working on a 7-man rotation.
Yes.
And there was no expectation for them to get to the Final Four. Gino said it early in the year. If we get there, it's a miracle. It is what it is. We're gonna do what we can do. It is what it is. And for them to play disciplined because they had 2 players in that game, Nika Mule and Aaliyah Edwards, both have 4 fouls
Right.
well into the fourth quarter and down the stretch. For them to play disciplined enough to not go over the edge, knowing how important that they are to their team, to still play solid. Aaliyah Edwards on the offensive end, taking Paige's lead. I loved seeing her out there on the court where she was very vocal. She was very definitive with where she wanted things to go and people to place the ball. I loved everything about that. And to me, that shows experience, that shows leadership, but it also shows good coaching. And I
Yeah.
know that we all still hate Gino Auriemma because of what happened with Candace Parker, and we're very sorry. And we are Team Candace all day long. But
Yes,
in
yes.
this moment,
You gotta give props.
I gotta give props to
Sorry,
Gino for
Candace. Forgive us.
forgive us, Candace. I got you, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
it's very impressive. And again, it's a redemption story for Paige, who just had
Yeah,
one hell of a journey to kind of get back to this point. And again, it just speaks to the impressiveness of Juju Watkins to be able to get this far with a team that a lot of people did not expect to even make it to this far, even as far as they did a few rounds ago. And to do that
yeah,
at 18 years old with so much riding on your shoulders and just so much
yeah.
of a fandom and a stardom already that's only going to continue to grow is just ultimately so impressive. USC is in very, very good hands. And
You know what I love about
once a
that?
program that people kind of, no longer thought about is right back in the forefront. And that's because of Juju Watkins.
And what I love about that is I recently read somewhere, I wish I could remember the outlet that I read it, but Cheryl Miller was one of the ones who, basically was like, we kind of felt ousted a little bit from this
Mm-hmm.
program. And Juju was someone who wasn't even alive when he thought of when Cheryl Miller was out here doing what she
Yeah.
was doing when Coop and the McGee twins and everybody was winning championships, and yet had played a role in making them feel a part of the program again. And I think of
Yeah.
all the things that she's doing, that right there is something that really speaks to her character.
Just you gotta give you gotta pay homage where it is, you know. So I love that. You know, big Juju fan. This was my attempt at the Juju bun, but it's not as good as
We got to get
hers.
the edge control. We got to
I
get the
know.
edge control.
I got the baby hair aspect, but I didn't get the bun part. It's not as tight as hers. Juju, please drop a tutorial. While I wait on that tutorial coming up, we're gonna break down the battle of the Carolinas. It's going to be crazy. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Ashley here, Terrika here, and as promised, we are going to break down the battle of the Carolinas, South Carolina, NC State. Now, these two teams last went head to head in 2021 with South Carolina winning that matchup 66-57. Now, it is going to be very, very interesting. Cook was the leading scorer for that game with 17 points. I mean,
Yep.
South Carolina unanimously is the favorite to win the whole thing. I mean, you go bracket to bracket. It does not matter who's doing it, who's thinking it. It's South Carolina. Do we expect this to be somewhat of a battle, or is it going to be what they did to my UNC Tar Heels? Unfortunately, I still have
I'm so,
PTSD from that, so tread
I'm
lightly,
so
please.
sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to all the Carolina fans out there. I would never disrespect a program this far in the tournament and say you've got no shot, you've got no
Right.
chance. You know what I mean? Like at this point in the tournament, you've been tested and you've battled.
Battle
So
tested. Yeah.
so for real. So to say that NC State is just completely out of it, I won't do that. I think Wes Moore has really done a great job with making this team just a gritty team. They know how to battle, they know how to hustle. And I love the guard play that I've seen from Isaiah James. I love the post play that I've seen from River Baldwin. I just also know that this Gamecocks team is just better. That they're better on the offensive side of the ball. They've got some amazing guards with Malaysia Phil Wiley. I think Tahina Paopao, outside of maybe Caitlin Clark, is probably the second best three-point shooter left in this tournament. Like she is just a beast from the arc, right? She can challenge anybody. Camila Cardoso, she's going to impose her will in the paint. She's going to own the paint defensively. We saw what happened with her, with anyone that tries to come inside. And when she's not able to do it, they got Ashlyn Watkins coming off the bench that's going to hold it down as well, which leads me to my other point, bench play. Their reserves are so good. They're giving you 30, 35 points a game just from the bench. Like it's hard to compete with that. So while I respect NC State and what they've done, I'm so happy that they've gotten to this point. I just also feel like whatever chance they have is slim. They're going to have to be 100% on their A game. And South Carolina is going to have some mistakes and some miscues, which we've seen them do. They had a 22-point lead at one point and lost it against Indiana. So it's not as if like they have not had mistakes or anything like that during their time.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, let's look into a crystal ball and let's go ahead and say we can predict the future and, dictate the future, however you want to word it. What would happen, or what would be the reason why South Carolina loses this and NC State wins it? What goes wrong for South Carolina? What goes right for NC State?
Defensive miscommunication and a poor shooting night. That if you get Isaiah James going off the way she's been going off over these last couple of matchups here in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16, if you get that, and then you have a bad shooting day because it's
which
not
happens.
which absolutely happens. You get a slow start from South Carolina, you get bad defensive communication, which means missed assignments, missed matching ups, getting late to on the defensive end, not hustling in transition. Those kinds of things can absolutely ruin your perfect season if you're not too careful. So I don't expect that from South Carolina, only because this team is well coached and disciplined and because they're adaptable. I've been saying this about South Carolina the entire season. It don't matter what you throw at them. Like they start one way, they figure out that way's not working, and Dawn Staley changes it and they adapt. They make adjustments. That's what makes this team so good. So, so that's what would need to happen. It is absolutely more South Carolina not executing on their end that makes it go wrong for them than it is another team. I think the only team that I could say right now that is threatening South Carolina would be Iowa.
Well, listen, you mentioned Iowa, and we're going to discuss the main event, if you will, and that is UConn versus Iowa. The what is it? The heavyweight fight, if you will. We're gonna discuss that right after this break.
Blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness. Whoa!
You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
We are back. Sorry if I coughed in your guys' ear. I did not know that was coming back on. Ashley here, Terrika here, and I mentioned the heavyweight battle, the heavyweight fight, if you will, the matchup that has all the juice. It's circled on your calendar, and if you don't know why, I'm going to tell you why in just 1 second. It's UConn versus Iowa, but it's actually Caitlin Clark versus the school that she was hoping would recruit her, but never did. Now listen, I know hindsight is 2020, but like if you're UConn, you're probably looking around like, who is that did not go ahead and send a recruitment letter or even just take a meeting with this young woman? Like, you, sir or ma'am, need to talk to me right now. Could you believe when she came out with that story? And I'm what?
We were just on the good job, Gino. See, now we're back on the hate Gino train again.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Again, granted, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can predict someone's future. Nobody can predict how instrumental somebody will be in a sport or an industry. But it's like when you actually like look back and you're like, damn, I kind of fumbled that one, huh? It's like,
fumbled the bag.
You kind of did. Listen, UConn is here despite, much to your point, having so many players out of the rotation and working with such a short rotation throughout the entirety of this tournament. Would you say this is Coach Gino's best coaching job performance, if you will, like ever in his tenure as head coach of UConn women's?
I mean, he's been through some stuff and he's had some amazing players. So gosh, this might be at the top of the list. I don't know if it's number one, but it very
top
well.
three?
I mean, this is definitely top three. Like, if they make it to the national championship, it would absolutely be top two for me. Because there's no way that I saw this team being here. Like, I don't know. I started to notice the shift in UConn after Paige declared that she was going to come back.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, no, maybe it's just me. I actually even tweeted where I was like, this UConn team feels different. I just feel and you see it. And so now playing up against a team where on paper, right? If I'm looking at this on paper, Ashley, I'm like, UConn got the better defense, but Iowa got the better offense. So now it's, is offense going to win the game or is defense going to win the game? But then when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that the one flaw in UConn's defense is that they give up a lot of high volume 3-point shooting.
Right. I was just about to bring that up. Yeah.
To Iowa?
And Caitlin Clark, she does those in her sleep. So
a
little bit of a problem there.
You see that you picking up what I'm putting down.
I'm picking up what you're putting down for sure. Yeah, I mean, you brought it up though with Caitlin Clark. She did need 41 points to go ahead and beat LSU. Now, although you did get a better team effort from Iowa in that game versus LSU than you did say in the West Virginia game where Gabby Marshall was held to 0 points, although she contributed other ways on the court offensively, just a non-factor. And it really required Caitlin Clark to kind of just catch fire in that fourth quarter because West Virginia did a great job of kind of limiting her abilities on offense as well throughout the entirety of that game. Do you think that it's going to take that much from Caitlin Clark to go ahead and beat a UConn team that I think you can say is a little bit maybe more balanced when it comes to both sides of the ball, despite the fact that they've been shorthanded?
Yeah, you're going to need that much from Caitlin Clark simply because the same way that UConn's got to find an answer for Caitlin, Iowa going to have to find an answer for Paige. And that's not an easy answer. Like you need an open book test for that one, because
Right.
it is going to be difficult to stop Paige. Paige can do whatever she wants to do, especially as it relates to driving and attacking the basketball. And, you know, you want to see how they're going to counter, even if those two cancel each other out and you say, hey, I'm going to let Paige go off. I'm going to let Caitlin go off. We'll let them do their thing. We need to make sure nobody else is scoring. If you look at it from that perspective or from that angle, the edge still goes to UConn, only because Aaliyah Edwards, only because Ashlyn Shade, freshman, but she's doing a great job with facilitating, being a presence on the defensive end. I think that there are other weapons who are more consistent. That's the key word, consistency. You get the same Iowa team that showed up in the Elite Eight to show up in the Final Four, UConn is in trouble. You get the team that showed up in the Sweet 16 where it was only Caitlin and that was it.
Yeah.
Iowa is in trouble. So that's where we are. That's kind of where I fall with it.
I want to go ahead and talk about the defense because, you know, going back to the LSU game, the primary defender for 3.5 quarters was Haley. And it did not work. And we spoke about it earlier in the pod. It took Coach Kim forever to make the switch, make the adjustment.
Yeah.
And when she finally did, it really was just a non-factor. Now, it is going to be interesting what UConn's defensive strategy is on Caitlin Clark, because clearly a primary defender just leaves that poor defender on an island by herself for most of the game. So to your point, you know, are there going to be a lot of switches? How are you going to go ahead and defend Caitlin Clark, especially when you're a team that allows your opponent a lot of 3-point opportunities? The defensive strategy for this UConn team, I feel like, is going to be the biggest factor in whether or not this is a close game, a game that they win, or if it's just an absolute blowout. So defensively, what strategy do you think you would like to see, or that you need to see in order to make this game a factor for UConn to win?
Paige, you know your assignment. Like, you know your assignment. and really, to me, it's almost that simple, because you know this player. You two have played together for Team USA. You both have been National Player of the Year. Both of you have, you know, been able to understand the spotlight and the shine. And the problem is, Paige is a better defender than Caitlin. So if the roles are reversed, where you have to allow Caitlin to stop Paige, that's a more difficult task than it is for Paige to guard Caitlin. If that is the assignment that Gino decides to go with, it's the assignment I would absolutely go with. You also have a much better defender in Aaliyah Edwards. So driving to the basket, driving to the paint, you're going to feel Aaliyah when you get down there. And I think that is important too. I don't believe that there will be a simple primary defender on Caitlin. I do believe that they will do some man switch ups. I do believe that they will test her and force her to shoot early and shoot from outside. But at the same time, that is the Achilles heel for UConn's defense. Like, they sometimes give up way too many high volume threes. And if Caitlin is in a zone, if Kate Martin gets in a zone, if Gabby Marshall gets in a zone, that spells trouble for UConn. They want to limit those outside shots as much as possible. So you need to get in her face. You got to get in her face.
And I mean, offensively, defensively, there are strengths and there are weaknesses on both sides. So if we had to make a prediction, because we have to go ahead and predict. I feel like this game, outside of, you know, the NC South Carolina game, which, to your point, like, if you make it to the Final Four, you are due your respects. I think you can go ahead and, given something just drastic happening for South Carolina, just falling outside of their character as a team, you kind of know how that's going to go ahead and play out. You may not know the score, but it's safe to say I think we all know the outcome. Again, not a knock to NC State. Anything could happen. We have seen anything happen in March Madness. But if we had to go ahead and just say, given no surprises, South Carolina walks away from that one. I feel like this Iowa-UConn matchup's a little bit trickier to go ahead and predict, because what one team's really good at, the other is not, vice versa. But also, they're really good at exposing each other's weaknesses. It's a perfect matchup for the perfect storm. But if you had to pick, which side are you leaning towards?
This is super difficult, because this is just super hard. I had LSU and USC. in this situation, right? So this is like a fresh bracket for me.
Mhm.
But I feel that Iowa just might do enough to move to the national championship.
I agree.
I feel like it is setting I feel like we are being set up for a Final Four rematch between South Carolina and Iowa. And honestly, does it not make the most sense for
Yeah.
that? I mean, the
Yeah.
best team with the best record against the best player currently in the country. It's what we've wanted all season anyway. And South Carolina want their get back, right? Like they're gonna want their
They
get back.
do. They do.
Like,
They want it
yeah.
bad. I mean,
They want
listen, it's a crazy, crazy matchup because it could go either way. But to your point, I kind of I don't know, maybe it's just like superstitions of mine, but I don't know. All the momentum just seems to just be percolating around Caitlin Clark. Like every time you think she's done, every time you think a team I really thought that Iowa was washed after that West Virginia matchup. In that first half, I said, oh man, this is not going to be the
Yeah.
Cinderella story, her senior year, being labeled the GOAT, all the accolades, like she's really going to end right here. And Caitlin Clark said, not today. LSU, you and I, we both had LSU advancing.
Sure
I thought
did.
that this was going to be where Caitlin Clark kind of just, bowed out. And then she announced that she's going to the draft and her new chapter begins. Said, I'm not done yet. I feel like it's kind of like Brady. You got to stop betting against him at some point. You know what I mean?
I will say that as confident as I feel that South Carolina can and most likely will move on to the national championship, I am not that confident about either team on the other side of the bracket. I would not be surprised if UConn did it. I would not be surprised if Iowa did it. I think Iowa might do it, but when I tell you I would not be surprised if UConn did it, I wouldn't be. So Husky Nation, I live in Connecticut. Don't come for me. Don't be out these streets trying to get me at Target, asking me why I said what I said. Listen, I'm telling you, I believe that y'all are capable of winning. I think that this matchup will just be so close that Iowa might do the little things to help get them over the edge. But
you gotta get a Target disguise where it's like a UConn hat. So that when people see you out, it's like, oh, that can't be Terrika. She wearing a UConn hat. It can't be her. Let me go look for her.
Be one of those people that say, I got friends who went to UConn, guys. I promise.
I really do have a friend who went to UConn, which is so funny. Okay, looking ahead, Cleveland. Championship game, title game, however you want to refer to it as. Prediction. Who's going to be in it and who's going to win it?
Okay. Quick pick. South Carolina, Iowa. Close game, less than 5 points. South Carolina wins.
Ooh, not a wild take. I think everybody has that. I'm going to go South Carolina, obviously. I'm going Iowa also. But to make the pod a little bit interesting, I'm going to go Iowa wins it.
Come on,
upset South Carolina.
Let's go, Ashley. Let's go. Let's throw it out there.
Go ahead and jump on the other side of things. And Caitlin Clark gets the Cinderella, the storybook ending to an already illustrious, just collegiate career. And she rides off into the WNBA sunset with a national championship in her back pocket. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. Although I'm leaning more towards your side, let's make things interesting. Okay.
Someone needs to create a graphic with Caitlin Clark on a horse riding literally into the sunset with Ashley's quote right underneath it and like a chant. There, like that would be. If someone does that, please credit me. There you go.
With the trophy in the back pocket.
With the trophy in the back pocket. Just ride it.
Caitlin, if you want to use that as part of like your WNBA draft, announcement, please feel free. Just go ahead and take that. I'd like to see the cowboy have very Cowboy Carter like.
Yeah, Cowboy Carter. Come on.
Lasso and all. I'm here for it. We're in a cowboy themed, era. As long as it's not the Dallas Cowboys. I don't want to talk about them. I can't. That's a different pod. That's a different pod. I'm gonna save that for my therapist. Listen, everybody, that's all for us this week. Make sure you guys remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share with any college basketball fans in your life. And maybe if you have some people in your life who are trying to get into women's college basketball specifically, you can go ahead and share these videos and recruit a fan or 2 or 3. And make sure you guys are tuning into the Final Four and the national title all going down this week live from Cleveland. Until then, myself, Terrika, we'll see you then. Bye, guys.
See ya.